What if I told you that our understanding of happiness is totally wrong and that there's clear biochemical evidence for this? What if I told you that every psychiatrist was targeting the wrong neurochemicals and that the neurochemicals they're targeting make no long term improvements to our happiness? This is not a fantasy. We have evidence for this. If you go to a psychiatrist today, they will most likely prescribe an antidepressant to increase your serotonin levels. If two of these are proven not to work, then they may switch to an antidepressant to increase your noradrenaline levels. Serotonin and noradrenaline are neurochemicals that, if increased, will make you happier. But we need to look at the type of happiness that this produces, as there's another antidepressant neurochemical that's totally neglected called oxytocin. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to advertise oxytocin as some magical pill to sort everything out, but I think it does go a long way to explain why society, psychiatry, and science and medicine has focused on the wrong way to get happy. What is the significance of oxytocin? Well, the traditional neurochemicals are released when you're successful, such as receiving a lot of money, having a big house, or going on holidays. There is, however, no real foundation to this type of happiness because it's a happiness in things. Oxytocin, on the other hand, is an antidepressant chemical that we release when we're loved and when we love others. It's our bonding chemical, a chemical for empathy. We release it when we hug others or have a close relationship with others. When we're lonely or feel mistreated or undervalued, our oxytocin drops. If this is the reason that we feel sad and our oxytocin levels are very low, then boosting our serotonin by shopping or eating or watching TV or with antidepressants isn't the answer. It will make us feel a bit happier, but it's not the correct chemical. Boosting serotonin is like being tired from a lack of sleep and thinking that coffee's our answer, because it makes us feel less tired. It's true that it will reduce the negative symptoms of sleep deprivation, but it isn't optimal because it's not addressing the cause. Our tiredness, for example, isn't due to a coffee deficiency, just as our loneliness, our feeling of being unloved, isn't due to a serotonin deficiency. We're designed to have meaningful relationships, to feel that we're making a positive difference for others and that those people appreciate us. Many people have had lives of hardship that you would expect to cause depression. However, despite poverty or disease or hard work, many of them have been happy and fulfilled because of the loving, supportive, and empathetic people around them. This has boosted their oxytocin. Oxytocin has therefore more than given these people the feelings of fulfillment and happiness to stave off depression. Now, I'm definitely not saying that we can extract all our serotonin and throw it in the bin. Whatever oxytocin levels we have, it's still extremely important to also have healthy serotonin levels. What I'm saying is that if we have reduced oxytocin levels, then we won't feel truly happy and satisfied with life. And then any reduction of our serotonin levels will make us feel much worse. Autism is associated with lower oxytocin levels. And we can see behavior common in these people that show that they're attempting to correct their oxytocin levels. For example, the rocking back and forth is recreating being held by their mum and being rocked back and forth to calm them down. This works by increasing oxytocin. This is also why weighted blankets can be so useful for people with autism, and actually in fact useful for most neurotypical people as well. Because it increases oxytocin levels, because it simulates the feeling of being hugged by another person. Again, it's this connection, the relationship with other people, love in other words, that is boosting our oxytocin levels. What are the signs in neurotypical people of low oxytocin levels? Well, apart from the low mood, increase in anxiety, sleep difficulties, etc., there's also reduced empathy for others, a poorer theory of mind, which is our ability to notice and understand other people's emotions and ways of thinking. Low levels of oxytocin cause difficulties in bonding between the mum and the baby. This is why, when you give birth, the uterine contractions are caused by the surge in oxytocin. This allows you to bond with the baby when it's born. Then, when you breastfeed, that also causes another release of oxytocin. And the physical touch of the baby drinking from the breast causes the baby to also release oxytocin. This therefore facilitates the bonding which is so important between the mum and the baby. High levels of oxytocin can show increased in-group, out-group thinking. This is where members of the same perceived group, such as race, political ideology, or gender, may think it's more important to associate with their in-group people, and the empathy for the in-group people may be so strong that they put their empathetic emotions above truth and law. For example, they may break rules, such as choosing to lie to avoid hurting their in-group friends. This may not be something that they would do for an out-group person or in their work life. Oxytocin is important for healthy emotions. However, there's always the risk that we put our emotions above morality and law. A correct balance of this is therefore always required. Oxytocin actually enables in-group members to be flexible in their thinking so that they can more easily adapt their opinions to agree with the other in-group people. This shows why it's so useful to gain a close, healthy relationship with someone to influence that person's thinking. That relationship causes the boost in oxytocin and makes the other person more adaptable. This can be seen in marriages, where statements that boost a partner's oxytocin level can be used before discussing a contentious or potentially hurtful topic, so that the other person's more adaptable to accepting the truth. An example could be a wife saying with a hug, "Husband, I love you so much and I respect your opinions, but I find I would like you to change this bit of your behavior." As relationships progress, there's a natural decline in oxytocin. The initial infatuation seen at the start of a relationship is caused by huge levels of oxytocin. It's a little bit like a psychosis during that period, and people can become overly focused on their partners as their partners are the in-group people, and the in-group only contains you and your partner. People outside this relationship, the out-group members, which might be your actual friends that you've been friends with for many years, they can become neglected, and the voice of reason that they give can be ignored. As time goes by, this infatuation declines along with the oxytocin. At this point, we can no longer require our body to produce the required oxytocin. We have to work. If we don't, we will lose love for our partner. We will lose empathy for our partner. We have to make a decision to act as if our oxytocin levels are high by doing the loving things that oxytocin causes, and then the body will respond by actually releasing more oxytocin. So at the start of the relationship, the body does the work for you. It gives you the oxytocin. Into the relationship, you have to do the work to make your body produce that oxytocin. We need to continue to go on dates with our partners throughout our marriage and continue to hug and show them affection and whatever love language works for them. Words of affirmation are also essential, and continued evidence of empathy and concern, with both sides showing love by occasional acts of sacrifice, such as sacrificing some sleep to do something loving for our partner, will enable this oxytocin to continue to be released in both partners. Of course, the other option is, once our oxytocin levels naturally drop, is to then divorce our partners and replace our partners with someone new to get a fresh dose of the new relationship oxytocin. This is a selfish and doomed way to act, because to not work for our oxytocin reward, we're going to be doomed to suffer low oxytocin levels after the infatuation stage of every relationship we have. The infatuation stage is relatively short. Our oxytocin levels would therefore be low for the majority of our lives if we don't work at it. The COVID lockdown has led to a lot of isolation. This will have naturally caused a drop in oxytocin. Even the use of masks may be found to reduce our perceived connection to others. For example, eye contact increases with higher oxytocin levels and vice versa. Oxytocin increases our eye contact, and eye contact increases our oxytocin release. Masturbation likely increased over the lockdown period as well. Masturbation does actually lead to an increase in oxytocin levels for a short period. However, the studies show that it is nowhere near the levels achieved from natural coitus. Tiredness and a will to sleep is caused by the oxytocin release after coitus. Insomnia is also an issue for people with low oxytocin levels. When we have low oxytocin levels, we often do things to try and increase them. However, these techniques tend to be very ineffective. For example, an 18-year-old who has just started at university is very likely to experience an initial increase in loneliness and pining for the family group that they've been attached to. This is low oxytocin levels. This motivates people to do things to boost their oxytocin levels, such as going to nightclubs and banter with friends and people of the opposite sex. It motivates them to sleep around and sacrifice themselves for the connection that they can get from partying with others. This will generally increase acute serotonin and noradrenaline levels, as well as dopamine from the excitement from the fun that they're having. But going home to a lonely room will still be the end result for the majority of these nights, and therefore cause the person to suffer from low oxytocin levels again. Sleeping around is also not associated with high oxytocin levels, and in fact, higher oxytocin levels caused men who were in a monogamous relationship to actually increase their distance between themselves and another attractive woman who isn't their wife. Oxytocin increases fidelity and makes the partners feel more content and secure around each other than low levels would. Now, we've been indoctrinated completely the wrong way. If you watch a Disney film, you'll often see a young person pining with low oxytocin levels. They're not surrounded by friends, they're not married, they're looking for the love of their life. But these Disney films always end with the woman increasing her serotonin and noradrenaline rather than oxytocin. She goes for the most attractive man, who has the biggest palace, who has a position that people will praise and clap, and he has lots of money. And forevermore there'll be no stress or sadness or poverty that will decrease their serotonin or noradrenaline. However, these are all superficial things. They're not things that will cause an increase in oxytocin. We're taught at the beginning of the film that low oxytocin levels can be corrected by increasing serotonin and noradrenaline. And how is this any different to a psychiatrist today that says, take an SSRI, if that one doesn't work, take another one. That will increase your serotonin. If that doesn't work, move over to a medication that increases your noradrenaline. But they will never prescribe a medication or a form of therapy that affects the oxytocin levels.